morning, good afternoon and good evening to wherever you happen to be in the world. My name is Vanessa Sulikowski and I'm a technical solutions architect with Cisco with a focus on collaboration technology. Now, I'm normally based in Sydney, Australia, but I actually happen to be in San Jose, California this week. So coming to you from San Jose. Now, I will go through the slides and I will try and remember, so you can see the slide deck there, to tell you when I am changing slides. It is my pleasure today to chat to you about a topic that I really have a particular passion for, and that really is workplace transformation. If you think about our work environments and our work practices, they're really fundamentally changing, and this has really been influenced by major advancements in technology, rapid globalisation of all industries, and major changes in workforce expectations. So we all want to work a little bit differently. And that has had impacts and benefits to all parts of our organisation. And if you move on to the next slide, you'll see a picture of a traditional work environment. And if we look at this traditional work environment, it's very outdated. You know, the way that we work and the way that we collaborate really has changed. And historically, when someone said work, you would instantly think of a place that you go to, or maybe a desk that you sit at. And reality is, work is no longer a desk you sit at or an office or a place you go to. Work is not where you are, work is what you do. And you should be able to do that from virtually anywhere. Now, when organisations today are looking to set up new real estate, if they're looking at refurbishments, moving to new premises, looking to even, reevaluate and redesign their floors, they're no longer looking to build these rows and rows of worker cubicles that you see here. And those high walls and those big partitions, they're not conducive to collaboration. More and more employees, are looking to collaborate. They're looking to work in teams, foster innovation through collaboration. And so we really need to look at how we can modify this environment. And these rows and rows of cubes were all around repetitive tasks. And if you think about the automation revolution that we've seen in the last few decades, all of those repetitive manual data entry style tasks have really either been virtually eliminated or eliminated, so they really have been reduced. And so we have to come up with better designs on how we can bring people together and encourage people to come into the office and make the office a really nice and delightful work environment. So if you move to the next slide, there has been some side effects of these traditional high wall, cubicle, segregated work environments. And things like inflexible work practices has also led to some of those side effects as well. And one of the big ones, and the one that's right across the top on this slide, is the inefficient and underutilisation of our corporate real estate assets. Honestly, most organisations, so most offices around the world, only utilise their office space about 50% of the time. So any office that you work in, particularly in the United States and where we see some of the big campus environments, you've probably got spare desks around you for a lot of the time. And the hard piece about this is a lot of organisations don't even know how underutilised this asset is. They don't have good visibility, there's no reporting. Most of them rely on things like badge in, badge out data, or manual data where somebody might actually walk around and write down if somebody is actually sitting in a particular queue. So we don't even really have great statistics on how underutilised the real estate assets are. And when we've got such a rigid structure and such a segregated environment, there's a lot of challenges in attracting new employees and even retaining our top talent. And that leads to things like leakage of our institutional knowledge, doesn't really foster innovation or allow any flexibility or agility in our workforce. So that really underlying problem is that most organisations are still set up for that process-orientated work and not for collaboration. If you move to the next slide, some of the challenges that that structure and then the changing nature of workforce are really becoming evident, coming to light. And one of the big ones is that changing demographics. As millennials enter the workforce, their expectations are a lot different. They want mobility, they want flexibility, they want to be able to work from home, they want to be able to just come into the office for a couple of hours when they need to do collaborative and teamwork. And then on the other end of the spectrum, each and every day, tens of thousands of baby boomers are reaching retirement age. And so potentially some of those that maybe were very protective of their office and desk environments are diminishing. And what we're actually saying is that the same workplace environment could actually have 4 generations. So you could have 4 generations that do want to work in different ways. And that's led to an evolution of employee and employer contracts and those social contracts. And we've seen a dramatic increase in flexible work arrangements, where we can do flexible work hours, job sharing, part-time agreements, telecommuting, even a rise of contingent workforce. And this has been particularly beneficial for women, and particularly women that have started a family, want to re-enter the workforce, but don't want to come back full-time. And they can look at options like the job sharing part-time. What we need to do is ensure that the work area that they're going into is conducive to allow them to do that. Technology has been a massive shifter here as well, particularly mobility. Things like tablets, things like being able to use our smartphones and our tablets, and even take notebooks remote, means that we're no longer wired into desks. So where we were stuck in a cubicle because that's where our technology happened to be, we can now move between different environments. So that's had a big impact as well. Now, if you move on to the next slide, one of the major trends that we're seeing in workplace evolution and in workplace transformation is activity-based working, or ABW for short. And ABW is all around designing and creating a variety of flexible workspace experiences that are aligned to the activities that need to be performed. The advances in technology and that explosion in popularity of smartphones and tablets has meant that we really can work everywhere. And so we can start pulling down those work boundaries, those traditional boundaries that were physical, so our partitions, but also those technology boundaries, so where we were wired into our desks. And so we can now have the experience where we move from one place to another that is really designed around the activities that we need to do. And if you think about your work day, it's probably filled with all sorts of different activities. You may need to be creative. You may need to collaborate with others, internally and externally. You may need to just slog through some real mundane tasks, but you need to get them done. With activity-based working, you could then choose a workspace that really is dependent on the tasks you need to do. And this is not just open plan offices, and it's not just hoteling. What we're talking about is much, much more than that. For example, if you think about it, a particular floor in an office, you could have touch-down desks for focus work. You could have audio and video privacy rooms for when we need to do sensitive conversations. You could have multi-party collaboration rooms. So if I arrive at the office, I might check into a focus desk because the first thing I need to do in the day is plow through my emails. So get all my emails done, and then I might move into a quiet or a privacy room because I've got a one-on-one scheduled with my manager. And then I might move from there into a video collaboration room to collaborate with my team or with another team. And activity-based working is allowing and creating workspace environments that we can do that I can decide, depending on the activity I need to do, as to what space I will choose for that particular moment of the day. And, I could touch down in a desk all day if I do have focus stuff I need to do, but more and more we're seeing that people go to the office to actually collaborate with others. And so they want collaboration spaces where we can actually come together and work together. Now, if you move on to the next slide, you can see that activity-based working, people have got very, very creative, and there's some great funky examples of activity-based working spaces here. designed around team collaboration or even isolated work. So those chairs that you can see up in the top corner there, they actually have a hood. And so you're actually doing private work if you're sitting in those chairs and you just need some isolation and some privacy. The same with the funky beehives. So with those beehives, you can go in there, do your private conversations or just chill out and get some private work done. And more in organisations, we're also seeing open social collaboration spaces. Particularly those millennials, they want to work together. They want to be in an environment where they can have, transfer of knowledge by the conversations that they have with different teams. And so we're seeing a lot of those open areas. And so ABW, or activity-based working spaces, could encompass anything from those task-orientated areas, quiet rooms, video-enabled collaboration rooms, your standard meeting rooms and conference rooms, open collaboration spaces, and cafes, lunch rooms, you name it, a different space for all the different types of work that end users in an organisation need to achieve. Now, if you move on to the next slide, there's some major beneficial reasons for an organisation to look at workplace transformation and look at potentially implementing activity-based working. Probably one of the biggest ones, and the one in red that you can see there, is the real estate savings. In most organisations around the world, work-related costs are one of the top 3 expenses. And actually, in a lot of cases, it's the most sub-optimised organisational asset in a workplace. And so better utilising and optimising these resources should really be, a critical business imperative for most organisations. And a lot of companies are looking at and recognising that this is a sub-optimised asset, and how can they rework the workplace? How can they look at how do we consolidate, but how do we look at different ways of allowing our employees to work? There's some major cost benefits that we can get there, but there are also major productivity gains. If we create environments where people can come together and work collaboratively, we see productivity gains, we see fostering of innovation, we see people, working together and getting things done even quicker than they would be if they were just slogging away at their desk. With that workplace transformation and activity-based working, we can really achieve flexibility and mobility where employees can seamlessly move from one space to the other as their present activities change. So I've finished a document, I now move into a video room so I can collaborate with other people. Now on the Gen Y millennials, and I mentioned it earlier, but these are employees that really do want to work differently. They don't want to be chained to a desk. They do love that social aspect. And so open collaboration spaces, having somewhere that they can sit and be around others and work with others and have that interaction and knowledge transfer is really something that they're looking for. And so it's another big benefit that we see with activity-based working. Ultimately, if work's a really cool and collaborative and creative environment, you're going to attract employees and you're going to keep them longer. Everybody's probably familiar with the Google campus experience. Wouldn't it be great if all offices could be, even a part of that and have, some great and delightful experiences that we can have when we come into the workplace. If you move to the next slide, I just wanted to go through some things that you have to consider. So it's not just a case of putting in some new furniture and decor and pulling down those petitions. To really achieve the benefits of activity-based working, there's 3 key areas that we really do need to consider. And the first one, and probably the most important one, is the human element. Looking at the workforce, the cultural issues, HR policies, corporate policies, work styles and way people want to work. Ultimately humans are creatures of habit, and we need incentives and reasons to change. If you're going to take my desk away, you need to show me what I'm going to get. And it's really having them as part of the conversation and making representatives from all of the user base involved in how you might change your workplace, showing them that they will, if they take away a desk dedicated to them, they will get areas where they can do focus work, but then multiple areas where they can go and do collaborative work and private work if they need to, but really making them part of that decision making and part of that conversation. Another area that really has to be involved there is management. And when we look at organisations and how traditionally, the manager-employee relationship has been, in a lot of cases, the manager has, expected employees to come into work, and that physically seeing has been, part of how they assess their employees. What needs to change is we need to look at more that output that employees produce and not, where they physically happen to be. So the managers need to embrace that, work is what you do, not where you are. And so that's a big part of the focus that you need to do on activity-based working as well. And when you think about this, there's a whole lot of groups that need to be involved. Corporate real estate, they're the ones that do all the planning and make decisions on what new office environments are going to look like. HR really needs to be involved, senior leadership and managers. If my manager embraces a new activity-based working environment, then I'm going to take a lead from that. I'm going to embrace it too. And so we really need all of those groups to come together and work with IT, because technology is a real enabler here. So usage and adoption, change management become a real important element. Now, I've seen a lot of hot desking disasters or hoteling disasters where organisations have decided, okay, they wanted to try and shrink their real estate, but in shrinking their real estate, what they do is really just turn the fixed desks that they have into hot desks or hoteling environments with no real management, resourcing, control around that environment. And really, this isn't conducive to people changing their work styles. What really happens in these environments is that people get in early and they save desks, and they might save desks not just for themselves but for other employees as well. Or the good one where people will put papers and books on desks to make them look like they're occupied. This isn't transforming your workplace, and it's not moving to activity-based working. What we really need to do is have those users involved, and the most successful ones that I've seen do a pilot, and so change a small part of their work environment, put in focus desks and touchdown desks, and put in some video collaboration rooms, collaboration benches, open collaboration areas, privacy rooms, because people still need to get that private and sensitive work done, and see which ones the employees use the most. What is getting the traffic, get the feedback from the users, and make sure they're involved as part of that process. And so that human element, really getting the buy-in from the users is so critical that I think most activity-based working projects won't get off the ground if you don't have all of those users and all of the key stakeholders in the organisation involved. The next piece there is the physical design, and the physical design is how do we change that physical environment, and it's not just about putting new furniture in. What we need to do is you need to work with organisations that have looked at how do we get people to use technology and technology with the space, and what is the best use of technology in a space? How can I seamlessly move from one area to another? And so it's looking at, social engineering, acoustic design. If we want to do privacy rooms, we need to consider the soundproofing things there. Illumination specialists, we want those big open social areas to be very inviting and have great colours and great lighting. And so all of those need to combine the space itself and the technology together. And the last piece, and I think the big enabling piece, is the technology. And this is all about using all sorts of technology that has filtered into our organisations over the last few years. If we look at the explosion of mobility and bring your own device, so that employees have choice of what devices they might use in the organisation. Things like virtualisation as well, security and policy come into that from any technology discussion. But a big one is collaboration, and it's collaboration tools, instant messaging and presence, voice, IP voice and video that really have allowed us to move away from being fixed to a desk where I had a fixed phone and a fixed environment to allowing me to be mobile and still connected and still productive. And it's the technology that's allowing to do that. Now, another big one is smart spaces, but I'll talk about that in a few slides, because this is how we can bring all these three elements together: the users, our physical areas, and also our technology. Now, if you move on to the next slide there, so just a slide check, we should be on slide 9. For most organisations, your largest resource is your employees, so your users. And with your users, what we've seen in the last decade is the most disruptive force in IT has been the influence of the end user. If you do something and the users don't like it, then it's destined to fail, unfortunately. If you want to successfully transform the workplace, you really need to take away any complexities. It needs to be easy and seamless. The users need to be able to interact with physical spaces and technology, and they need choice and variety. The technology can't be restrictive. They really need to be able to check into a space seamlessly, have great multiple options of how they can do that. So looking for that flexible work environment that allows them to seamlessly move between their personal environment and their professional domain, and being able to work and access anywhere. So working at home and then coming into the office and having similar experiences. And that's what we're really looking for when we look at activity-based working. Now, if you jump on to the next slide, there's quite a few technology innovations that have really driven and enabled workspace transformation. And these are ones that have been seen in most organisations. Probably the one in the middle there, most environments, desktops have been replaced by notebooks, smart tablets, and also smartphones. Unified communications and video enabling have allowed us to do collaborative things like this. Things like wireless technology, pulling away and follow me printing, those sorts of things have all allowed us to be able to change the way we work in an environment. And another big one is seamless and secure computing, so that we can have remote access, and so that if it's actually better for me to do my isolated work from home, then I can do that from home and then come into the office when I need to do collaborative work. And so that remote access is an important piece. But the other bit that we need is we need technology that allows us to, if we move into activity-based working environments, locate people and locate work environments that are appropriate to the activity we need to perform. In a traditional office environment, what we're used to is, I know Vanessa always sat at that desk, and so I'll just go and find her at that desk. Well, with activity-based working, I mightn't be sitting at that desk. And so you want technology that's going to allow you to see, okay, so where is Vanessa? Or at what floor am I located on presently? Where have I checked in? How can you find me? And that technology, so the meeting room scheduling and space management and locating people in spaces is so important to activity-based working. But drilling down a little on that, and that's moving on to the next slide there, all of those technologies and their underlying individual technology implementations like the Wi-Fi and video collaboration, network-based access and security, every organisation would have most or many of these. And the piece that's missing if we transform our work environment is how do we bring it all together? So how do we allow a user to find a space, interact with a space, reserve a space, and use that space for a certain period of time? And that's where technologies like smart meeting room and smart personalized spaces come into play. And Cisco and many other vendors have solutions that allow us to do this. If you jump onto the next slide, the role of technology here, and particularly the activity-based working space management, is all about connecting that physical desk, virtual workplaces. So if we want to connect to people in other areas of our organisation and outside, and the user. So bringing us all together and really enabling that flexibility and personalisation, choice, and enhancing our experiences. But the other level and an important role of an activity-based working management system is really to provide visibility. So visibility for the users to find what areas are available. Is there a video privacy room available for me to do a meeting right now, and where is that located? And on the other end of the spectrum, HR, workplace resources and IT can get reports and usage and visibility of how people are actually using the workplace assets. So what areas are most popular? What type of users, what departments are most frequently using particular meeting rooms, or particular multi-party collaboration rooms, or one-on-one rooms that we see, and they can then make decisions on how do we redesign if we need to redesign, or how do we create the next floor that we're going to do, or the next office. What do we need more of? What do we potentially need less of? What are the areas that are getting the most use? And that visibility is an important part of the technology. So if you jump onto the next slide, let's talk about how we can actually do this. So if we look at this floor, it's very different to the rows and rows of cubicles and high wall partitions that we saw in the first slide. So what we've got here is a transformed floor where we've got in the centre there, we've got some touchdown focus work desks. So where we can sit down, get through our email, get through some documents, focus work that we need to do. And then we've got different styles of collaboration areas. And that might be open collaboration, it might be the smaller privacy rooms that are for 1 or 2 people, the larger collaboration and meeting rooms where we've got a big table, we can all get around it, we've got interaction with video whiteboards, interactive whiteboards, whatever we need. And potentially we also have open spaces where we can come in and visually see what environments are available, where I could actually interact with digital signage or a kiosk and be able to see, okay, I've entered into this floor, what is available for me to use, and really colour coding on that, and I'll talk about some of that. And so really redesigning that workspace for the different areas that we want to use. And when we look at this, traditionally what we would see is that those collaboration spaces in an organisation would be 30% of the floor real estate, and 70% would be to dedicated desks. And that's really changing. And what we see is that we really need to flip that on its head, and we really need to change that into 30% is those focused desks and 70% is open to collaboration. Now, most organisations will take quite a while to get to there, probably more of a 50-50, but as we see the benefits of working as teams and working in collaboration and not working in isolation, we will see that change from a predominance of focused desks to a predominance of collaboration spaces. Moving on to the next slide there, when we do look at redesigning our floor space, we need to look at workspace types, and there are many different workspaces, and what we do is try and group them into sort of 3 common groups. And the first group there is common spaces, the second personal spaces, and the third collaboration spaces. And if you think about common spaces, this would include things like our reception areas, maybe where we've got digital walls, lunch areas, break rooms, cafes are all common spaces. The personal spaces are those activity-focused work desks, touchdown desks, workstations, quiet rooms, and the personal collaboration rooms. Now, in lots of environments, there still may be, dedicated offices, particularly for more senior leaders. So there may be dedicated office space there as well. And you still might also have an element of fixed desks. There may be particular types of users in the organisation that need that 9 to 5. I've got to sit at a desk and get more manual, repetitive work done, and so they can be part of the personal spaces there and allocated to them as a dedicated area. And then the collaboration spaces, and this is all the different types of meeting rooms, conference rooms, video collaboration rooms, team tables, collaboration areas that we have, and so we really categorize our areas, our different workspace types into one of these 3 areas, and then look at what combination, depending on what workers we have on what particular floor, of how many of each of these we should have. If you move to the next slide, the collaboration spaces are an interesting one, because this is the big growth area. This is in any organisation where we need more collaboration and meeting and team spaces. I'm sure all of you have heard the phrase many times, I can't find a meeting room. And it's one of those things that I was hearing every day, that we'll just have to do an online meeting because we can't find a meeting room. Even though we're in the same building, we can't get together face to face. And so looking at building collaboration spaces that really are flexible, so we can have those video focused rooms, the telepresence style rooms, more formal meeting rooms, particularly if we're doing customer facing meetings and presentations, video meeting rooms, more casual collaboration areas, and another interesting one is rooms that are flexible, that can be adapted depending on the different things that need to do. If we need to create a more U-shape because we want people more huddled together, or we need to move around or have video units that can be wheeled in, so have those on-demand room setups as well. Now, having all of these spaces, we need a way that we can manage it. Traditionally, with meeting rooms, they're booked by calendaring systems, and calendaring systems have been a great way to manage meeting rooms up to really up to date. But there's been some major problems that we see in that when you book through a calendaring system, all you get is whether it's booked or not booked. And how many times have you walked past a meeting room that says it's booked in calendar and nobody's there? It's so frustrating. I've got to say, it drives me nuts. The recurring meetings that people book and then don't show up. So with smart connected solutions, where we can more than just book a room, we can get reports on, was that room actually used? So we can look for the organizer of the meeting actually checking in to the meeting room within a certain period of time. So say 15 minutes after the start of their meeting. If they haven't checked in, then we can release that meeting room, and then it's available for somebody else to use. And really having that additional control around meeting rooms means that we can better use those collaboration spaces. If you move on to the next slide, I'll talk a little about some technology that can actually allow us to do that. So looking at our floor here, so back on our wonderful redesigned floor, we've got the option to have, and it's actually on the next slide there, so smart connected meeting spaces is all about really improving that meeting room management. And we're not talking about just booking a room. So if we reserve a room, we can also reserve a whole lot of other back and front of office things that might need to be done as part of booking the room. Do we need to organise catering? And so organising catering as part of a room booking. being able to find the room. So having an interactive map that can say from the location where you are, how do I actually get to the room? But also presetting the environments. So do I need video? Do I need audio visual? Do I need whiteboarding, projector? All of those technology things that when we get into a meeting room, we normally waste about 5 minutes setting up, all have them preset and ready to go, and turn that air conditioning on. Now, when the room's not in use, turn them all off. And turn them all off, and then we can, really start looking at energy saving across all of those meeting rooms. The room's no longer in use. Bring down all those facilities, and when it's next booked and next ready to use, then we'll start all of the different technology and components that are in the room. On the next slide, so we do look at personal spaces a little differently. So meeting rooms have a lot of environmentals that we want to control. Personal spaces are more about booking a particular space that has the facilities that I want to use. So does it have a telephone? Does it maybe have a video device? Does it have a monitor, because I want to use a secondary monitor? And looking at, okay, each of the different spaces that are available for personal use, what are the types of technology that are available there, and I can choose that space. You also have the option of creating something that's really cool, and that is neighbourhoods. And if you've got different teams, you can actually create a neighbourhood for a team. And so we allocate these, 8 or 10 desks to a neighbourhood, and I can go search a neighbourhood and find my colleagues that I would normally sit next to, and find a space that's available near them. And I can then very easily jump in, and if we need to have a conversation, I know where they are, and we can move into a collaboration room and continue that conversation. Another thing that can enhance the experience is having kiosks and digital signage, and so that as soon as I walk into a building or into a floor, I can see what spaces and what meeting rooms are available. And on an interactive floor map, I can see through colour coding, is there a focus desk available? Is there a privacy room available? Is there, I need a video collaboration room that can fit 5 people? Is that available? And that colour coding is green, it's available. Orange, it's in use. We have also options like yellow to see that the space is going to be available maybe in the next 15 minutes, and so you can very visually quickly see what's available. But you can also, using those interactive displays, search for your buddies. So look for your colleagues, see where they're sitting, maybe a team meeting. If your team is meeting, find out what meeting room they're in, and the interactive map, just like in a shopping centre or mall, will actually show you what's the best way to get to that location from where you happen to be located. If you jump onto the next slide, so what it's all about, so putting in these smart connected solutions is really enabling new experiences, and those new experiences really do need to be seamless. And so we see with the smart connected solutions here that some of the things that we really need to ensure that we have is that remote working. If I need to be able to work from home or really work from anywhere. The touchdown hot desking style environment, so I can do focused work, enhancements to meeting experience and personal experience, having those really productive meetings where all the technology is ready to go as soon as I get into the room, and even showing me how to get there. And really having the same experience available for visitors into our organisation, so not just the employees, but visitors as well. Now moving on to the next slide, and just touching on how a user would interact in a smart connected solution. If they've got the option to reserve, and reserve by multiple different methods. I did say one of the key imperatives of activity-based working is giving the users choice. And so to reserve a space or a meeting room, they can use Outlook. If that's their favourite way of doing it, then they can use Outlook to do that. but there's also mobile apps, there's kiosks, there's digital signage, there's web applications. They can actually use phones that are on desk. If I can walk up to a phone and log in on a phone, and that'll reserve the space. QR codes are also an option, or badge access. So if you use badge for anything else in your environment, entering the work environment for printing, then we can use badge access for reserving and going into rooms. Location, I talked a little bit about the wayfinding, so we can find people and spaces and meeting rooms, and we can do that on a mobile app, we can do that on a web app, or we can do that on kiosks or digital signage. And then experience. So when you get to the space, if it is integrated with a collaboration solution like IP telephony, it'll actually log in your phone. That'll be your phone as soon as you touch down on that desk. So you sit down in the chair, that space has become your space. It's got your phone number, it's got all your voicemail messages if you have any, and any of the preset preferences that you have. So when you get to that space, it has been personalised for you. Now, if you move to the next slide there, just a couple of more details, and I'll just touch on a few things here. With that reserving and scheduling, one of the great things about it is you can actually set up favourites if you do have a favourite desk, and everybody does. You can actually, pre-select and say, is my favourite area or space available? You can search based on attributes. So if I want something that does have a particular type of technology there, if I do want that additional monitor, then I can search for that equipment. And I can also, search for people before I reserve a space. I can say, okay, where's the colleagues that I need to work with today, and find a desk that's located near them. And that location piece that will allow us to find our way there. And particularly, as I said, today I'm in Cisco's San Jose office, and this is a big campus. It does get quite tricky finding the meeting room that I booked for today, having that wayfinding application. So I used it on my iPhone, and it showed me exactly from where I came in the front door to where this meeting room happened to be. And then experience, as I said, you can personalise the environment and set your personal preferences. Now, for our IT and our workplace resources, there's administration, so they can create and modify spaces and create interactive floor plans. But really importantly is that reports and business intelligence. So they can see how people are using those spaces, and not just through this system, but also through wireless technology. So a really interesting piece is I might book a meeting room, and I might book a meeting room, and I go in, I check into the meeting room, but another 3 people join me. Now those 3 people are connected to the wireless network, and the system will actually capture that there were 4 people in that meeting room. Now where this becomes really interesting is when we're doing looking at how we would design floor space. That might be a 10-person meeting room, but 90% of the meetings that are in there are 5 people and below. Why would we not create 2 meeting rooms that can fit 5 people? And these are the sorts of things that analytics can and reporting information can give you. Now jumping on to the next slide, and just a little bit of going back to what does this mean, and really what can activity-based working do, and why do we need to start looking at it in our organisations? And it's really because our work styles have really changed. If you think about, typically we would have been in the office at 9 to 5, we were allocated a specific desk, and we were chained to that desk, and if we had to do a meeting, we would travel to that location for that meeting. We wouldn't use technology for the meeting. For me, I'd jump on a plane or might jump on a train to get to a meeting. And that has really given way to more flexible new styles of working, and it's all been focused around team and collaboration, and anywhere, anytime. So I can really get together with anybody in my team or other teams, or even customers that I need to interact with, using technology from everywhere. And the workplace really needs to change to allow that. And we see workplace environments more becoming collaboration hubs. And that isolated work that I need to do, I can really do that from anywhere. I may not need to come into the office to do that. I could do that for home. But where I do want to come together with people and collaborate with teams is where I'd come into the office and have that collaborative experience. Now, moving on to the next slide really shows, where we really need to shift. Those individual assigned cubes and desks, that were predominantly underutilised, they need to shift and become those team spaces and neighbourhoods. And those neighbourhoods can be assigned to those different teams, and they can use them how they would like to use them, make them all focused desks if they want, or make them that great combination of focused desks and collaborative spaces. We really need to move from individual work in isolation to that collaborative work that fosters innovation. From the inflexible one-on-one allocations of desks to providing systems that provide space, for any kind of different work that we need to do. And from that real estate control to individual business units having assignment of their neighbourhood and using as they best see fit. And really looking at that mantra of, work is no longer a place that you go to, it's what you do. Now, there's some big benefits here that I'd just like to touch on that really, most organisations can really tangibly see. And, for the CXO and senior leadership level, there's the reduction in real estate costs, those real estate consolidation, better usage of the real estate assets that they have. There's employee productivity. If you've got an environment that is conducive to collaboration, then that allows better productivity. It also attracts new employees and allows you to retain current employees, and these are all benefits that can be seen. Move on to the next slide. There's heaps of benefits for the workforce. Their benefits, really that work anywhere, work from any device, that choice and flexibility. You are more productive and you concentrate better if you are in the right space with the right tools. And a side effect of this, and I would say it's a great benefit, is when we do move from space to space, depending on the activity that we're doing, we are more active. We're not sitting at the same desk all day. We're moving around. We're not sedentary. We do have that, better interaction and better movement through the day. And it does make it easier for us to collaborate. You move on to the next slide. Really big benefits here for all parts of the organisation. Facilities management benefits, benefits in being able to get that visibility. HR will want that visibility, IT wants that visibility, and it always amazes me the types of things that they can actually capture, and I'm not sure how well you can actually see that picture that's there next to facilities management benefits, but there's some hot spots that that guy is actually looking at. And then it's actually, where the most people are congregating at that particular point in time. And we can use wireless technology to even look at common dwell areas. We can look at footfalls. So where does most of the traffic go? Do I go from this focus desk to this particular meeting room? What neighbourhoods are most occupied? What workspaces are most in demand? What's the habit of use? And we can get really fine-grained reports by location, by space type, by users, by department. And so when we are looking at how do we redesign the next office and the next campus beyond the one we're doing today, we've got really great statistics and really great usage reports that can show maybe we do need more of those collaboration spaces, maybe we need more private rooms, maybe we do need more focused desks. It really depends on how your organisation works. Now moving on to the second last slide here, so really wrapping it up, and how do we do this, and really what are the areas that we need to look at with the workplace of the future, and there's sort of 4 key things here. The first is that really palette of our workplace experiences. We need fit-for-purpose, technology-enabled workplaces and workspaces, so where I can sit down and the technology that I need for that particular activity is there in that space. And if it is a video meeting, then it has something that's really easy to use, and I can reserve it and then go in and even book my meeting, and my meeting is instantly up, and all of the remote participants can come in and really blend local participants and remote participants in a hybrid meeting. Collaboration capabilities, if we want to collaborate, we need technology that allows us to do that. And whether that be telephony, video, whether that be sharing, all of the different collaboration technologies, bringing in internal, external participants as well. Attractive and appealing for your visitors and employees. It's interesting that your workplace is actually an extension of your corporate brand. And if we've got something that is really attractive and really delightful to experience, that is something that our visitors and potential employees will actually see and find really appealing. And that most important one, which I've highlighted a bit throughout our session, is really that workplace management and visibility. So being able to understand utilisation of our workplace resources. So what areas are being used, collecting that data, and then being able to make better decisions on how we transform our workplaces as we go into the future, because this technology is just going to get more and more enabling, and the spaces will want it actually integrated directly into each and every one of the spaces. If you move on to the last slide there, I just wanted to reiterate those three essential components that we need to look at for a successful activity-based working initiative. And that's really a combination of that policy, so our human element and how we bring the users in, how we change workplace policy to allow us to modify the way that our workplace environments are. The workspace design itself, what is going to work in our organisation. A lot of organisations won't get really funky, but what they will do is look at what are those fit for purpose areas that are going to be great for touchdowns, that are going to be great for collaboration, and the technology itself, and bringing that technology and actually allowing the technology to marry the three together. So our human element, our technology, and our workspace design. And I just wanted to leave you and thank you so much for your time today with remember that work is not where you are, work is what you do. And thanks.
What a great talk, Vanessa. I'm really talking about the future of technology. I love that saying, it's all about work is what you do, not where you are, and really rethinking of, how an environment can enforce a culture of technology, a new type of culture, a new way of thinking and innovating. It's really important for organizations to always be reassessing what's the best benefit for the organization, which inevitably leads to a great bottom line full of innovation and profitability. It's all tied together. So I really think it's an amazing talk and one that people will be referring to often. So does anyone have any questions that they would like to ask? Yeah, that was something that was mentioned. Schools should really be thinking about what you've mentioned here. I was looking at those hives, and I was thinking that too, Monica, that it would really benefit kids. They're now working in teams or working more collaboratively. It'd be great to have them in not so much a boxy environment where everyone's crammed in, with all these desks, to have more open areas and places where they can think together. Do you have any thoughts on that? Have you seen anything done in schools? I hate to put you on the spot.
Yeah, no, it is something that they are looking at, and I know in Australia we've got some schools that are actually looking at moving away from their rows and rows of desks, which almost are the start of them onto the cubes, and looking at more sort of lounge areas and more social interaction areas where the teacher could actually be in the center and the students around them and have that more interactivity than someone standing at the front and everybody facing front and center. So yes, it's definitely something that's being looked at.
Terrific. All right, well, thank you again for such a great session. I hope that you will join us for our next session, which is a two-part workshop, Women Can Negotiate with Jacqueline Jansen. We are queuing her up right now, and so we hope that you will all meet us over there. And yeah, Monica says, my daughter went to Montessori school where it was open seating and more open. Yeah, I agree with you. I think the schools are still stuck in what, the 1950s, Vanessa?
Yes, it is. The offices are in the 1970s and yeah, the schools are in the 1950s.
Yes, absolutely, absolutely. So definitely things to take away and to hopefully influence change in your own organizations and in your own workspace. You start there with your own workspace. And I took a selfie of my workspace. It's out there on Twitter, Voices 2014 with the hashtag. You can see how I'm working. And maybe it will influence some of you, or you can give me some suggestions on how I can improve my space.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you,
Thanks so
everyone.
much, everybody. All right, we'll see you at the next session.
Yes.